Let's warn you that the following story does contain some graphic details. A mother from Butterworth in the Eastern Cape has allegedly killed her 3 daughters before committing suicide herself. It's reported that the motive could have been poverty. Police in the area suspect that the children were poisoned and later stabbed. Joining us now to make sense of what could have led to this tragedy is Department of Educational Psychology at the Stellenbosch University, Dr. Melanie Moen, joining us for this conversation. Dr. Moen, thank you very much for your time. And it's a difficult one to talk about, but this is an area of work where you've conducted research. The motive, as I stated in that introduction, could have been poverty, but what other circumstances, in your understanding, could have led to this tragedy?
Yes, we've seen, especially with women now, that they are often severely depressed, and in South Africa, especially with poverty, there's no one to turn to, no one that supports you, and especially if the women have been to have asked for help, before, or have asked family members for support. They become basically desperate to sort of solve the problem. And we often see that they would murder the children out of altruistic reasons, because they believe that the child is now better off if they're rather dead than to try and leave them in the world alone, and to fend for themselves.
And I want to continue the theme of this discussion with the title of your piece that you conducted, or should we say the investigative work that you conducted, when parents kill their own children. The study zooms in on revenge felicide. Explain that to us.
Yes, so our study only focused on one type of felicide, and felicide is when a parent murders their child or parents murder their children. And we only focused on parents that do that to sort of hurt the other partner. So we don't know exactly what the extent is in South Africa, but we do see quite a number of cases in South Africa. The world over, it's about 2.5% of all murders, we would say, are felicides. And in our case, it was much more that we looked at. There would, for instance, be an argument between the parents, or an argument, or the parent would reject the other parent, or there would be divorce or something like that. So there would be a trigger event, and then the other parent would sort of try and get back at this person by murdering the child. And I think at the moment when they murder that child, the child is not really a person in their minds anymore. It's more about, I want to sort of regain control because I'm hurting so much. I want to hurt you as well.
Yeah.
And then they murder the child to sort of get back at the other parent or the other partner.
Yeah. Are you finding that in the country there is a growing number of cases where parents kill their children, and on the one hand, as you've just explained, it's to get some kind of vengeance against the spouse or the partner, or in other instances, in the matter of Butterworth, as it is being suggested there, that it could be that the parent did not want their children perhaps to suffer while they are gone, and therefore the solution, in their minds at least, is that they must come along with me.
Yeah, so I cannot comment on if it really is increasing. We've always seen these cases over the, centuries. So that's always been there. But I do think that South Africa, we've got many adversities that we have to deal with, like you've just mentioned, poverty, extreme crime, and so forth. So I think people are under a lot of pressure in South Africa, and I think we will see more and more of these cases if people start, feel desperate and have no one to turn to. We know that there are places that people can actually turn to get support, but I think in the moment when someone is as desperate as that, they can only think of the here and now and to solve the problem through a violent act.
Yeah.
But as you said, we have, in our study, we've actually we could easily identify 20 cases that were just specifically focused on revenge killings. So there are many other cases that we often also not see in the media, or they get little attention, but it is there. It's definitely there here in South Africa and the world over. But I think we do have very specific or very unique circumstances in South Africa because of our very high crime rates, poverty, and several other adversities that people are really exposed to on a daily basis.
Yeah. Let's talk about how you think the courts should treat cases like this. In other words, how should these cases be tried? And the reason I'm asking that is twofold. On the one element, the court can simply apply what would be easily known as, we're trying a person who has committed a crime. So this is pure criminality. Or should they delve into the mental state of the perpetrator?
Yes, definitely. The one thing with the courts is that society expects a person who commits a murder or a crime to be punished for that. So we've seen that, and that's part of why we have courts and why we have a system for that. So I think it's important. I know our courts would look at the situation, but they will also take into account the mental state of the person. I think earlier, many years ago, it was often just you committed a crime and therefore you would go to prison or you would get a life sentence or whatever. But these days, I do see that courts are much more sensitive towards your mental state, and they do go into finding reports from psychologists and finding out what is exactly going on in that person's life. And I think that is absolutely imperative. Otherwise, we cannot really, within reason, say that the person must go to prison for the rest of their lives. If there's really a mental reason for that. And we often see that there is severe depression. Also, when we look at the people's cases individually, there's often a lot of depression, major depression, that's actually causing these crimes as well.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, we cannot have a system where people can commit murder and there's no, consequences for your crime.
As we conclude our conversation, Dr. Moen, the question I have for you is the recovery phase of the parent who committed the crime, those that choose not to kill themselves, and indeed the parent against whom revenge was being sought by killing the children. Have you observed that? And if so, what did you observe?
Yes, I think in the moment, I think often the people don't realize what they are doing to themselves as well as the community, as well as the family. So we see that in the immediate act, I'm just angry and I want to get rid of this anger and I want to restore this control that I feel I don't have anymore, and you've hurt me, therefore I want to hurt you back. And I've read the case, for instance, the case in New Zealand now, that that's quite different. I think for a long time, she said she didn't realize what she actually did. But now it's becoming apparent that she's missing a family and she's realizing what she did. So I think the long-term consequences of these crimes are extremely important to understand as well. I think in the moment, people don't realize what they do often. I cannot speak for everyone. But long-term, I think people need support and help, because I think the psychological effects that it has on for instance, the partner, on the person themselves is extensive, especially the families. I don't think you can ever have enough empathy for the families that are affected by these crimes, because that's not something that you will overcome, I think, in your own lifetime if you've been exposed to that. It's very hard.
Yeah. All right. Dr. Moen, I'm completely out of time. There is another case, and it is of a mother who recorded herself kicking her toddler. This is a case here in Johannesburg. Your thoughts on what possible motives could have been there?
Apologies, it's the mother of, what did she do? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
The mother recorded herself kicking her toddler. This is a video that is now public. So your thoughts about the possible motive?
I think, again, my own opinion, and I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with the case, but my own opinion is that, the way that motherhood is also often portrayed in society. I often speak to mothers, and then it's sort of, you should always be happy. It should always be easy to look after your children. Whereas we find that it is a hard job, it's a very responsible job to have. And people don't realize what the frustrations and problems that go hand in hand with being a mother or being a parent. So motherhood is quite hard for most people, and I think most people don't have places that they can go to and speak to openly about their feelings. But something like that in society, I find, is always unacceptable. And I don't think we can ever have a good reason for doing that. I think this person, I wouldn't know their motivations, but it's something that is not acceptable in society.
Yeah.
And I don't think we can ever say that's something that we can sort of say we understand. We can try and get the reasons behind that, but we sort of, I can't condone anything like that. I'm not sure why she did that and why she felt that it must be published on social media, because that seems to be part of our problem, is that everything is now on social media.
Yeah.
And what about the child's rights, and what about the child's, we need to be more responsible, I think, when it gets to that. And as society, we shouldn't accept any of these types of crimes, and we should report it. If I can just end with this, is that this is Women's Month, and we see that people are often aware of, for instance, abuse and crimes that are being committed by a family member or by someone that I know or a neighbor. I do not know why we as society feel that we should not report these crimes, and I'm actually wanting to urge everyone, if you are aware of a family member or a neighbor or someone in your community that's committing these crimes, it should be something that should be reported to the social workers, to the police services.
Yeah.
Because I think some of our crimes can absolutely be, prevented if we just care a little bit or pay a little bit of attention to people around us.
All right. Dr. Melanie Moen, let me thank you very much for your time. She's from the Department of Educational Psychology at the Stellenbosch University.